Final Fantasy XV is a game that wasn't received well when it was first released, with many fans calling it a disappointment. Now, I didn't expect much when I was playing it for the first time in 2025, but I have to say I was pleasantly surprised, and I think people in 2016 were too harsh and were wrong about this game. Final Fantasy XV is an epic masterpiece that tells the tragic story of Prince Noctis. Now, is this game perfect? No, but it is original and does a lot of things right. It's a shame. Many people avoided this game probably because of the negative reputation that was built around it, but it is a game that is absolutely worth playing even 9 years later. In this video, I'll be going over just the base game and commenting on the story and what the game did right and where things could have improved, and why I think this is a brilliant game worth revisiting. So Final Fantasy XV starts off with a battle in a burning city, a battle that looks like Noctis is losing, but before anything is really revealed, you are transported back in time, and you are shown a younger Noctis bidding the king farewell on his way to get married. An odd and unusual start to a game. Why wouldn't the king be attending the wedding? What is this ceasefire/peace treaty all about? It's strange, but the opening does leave you with a lot of questions. Once you're on the road, you're in a car with your 3 friends. Starting a Final Fantasy journey in a car was really different and a welcome break from the series norm. But unfortunately, the car that you get immediately breaks down, which in my opinion wasn't the best decision, because it just slowed the pace down way too much, but at least the back and forth between the characters was fun and believable. You can really feel their pain as they push the car along. While it didn't work really to have the car break down in the first place, at least you got to see the personalities of Noctis, Ignis, Claudio, and Prompto. Making it to Hammerhead, you're introduced to Cid and Cindy, who repair the regalia, leave Noctis completely broke at the same time. Again, another poor decision. To have a prince leave his hometown and then start off completely broke is just unbelievable and irritating. How much cooler would it be if Noctis started the adventure both with a vehicle and thousands of gil, separating him from all the other preceding protagonists? There are major misses right at the start, but luckily the game only gets better from here. First few missions are quite fun because of the interaction between Noctis and his friends. Their personalities are continually on display during, between, and after every battle. Even though I didn't quite grasp the combat at the beginning, and though sometimes the lines between the characters were a bit repetitive, it still made for an enjoyable playthrough because it always felt you were in a party sharing this adventure. Later on, I would grasp the combat better, and it's actually really fun and satisfying. Along the way, the game would introduce things like camping, photography, fishing, but all these mechanics were tied to the characters and their personality, which added so much life to the characters and was seamlessly woven into the gameplay that it never truly felt like a chore. And things like the time of day, weather changes, dangers of traveling at night, fuel consumption, and the fact that you could only level up once you have actually rested added a bit of realism in this fantastic realm. Not everything was just hunting and slashing random monsters. The world had rules and you were forced to respect them. I was completely enjoying exploring, gathering magic, doing little side quests and hunts, that it almost felt like I was playing a simulator and not a Final Fantasy game. I eventually had to force myself to quit just doing side quests because I wanted to see what the story was about. I wanted to meet Lunafreya, I wanted to see Noctis get married, and then tragedy strikes. I was not prepared for this. I just wanted to run around the desert and hang out, and I think that's maybe what Noctis wanted to do as well, and what he's been doing most of his life. But it wouldn't be a Final Fantasy if a kingdom didn't come crashing down. His father is killed, but luckily Luna wasn't. She retrieved the ring meant for Noctis, but at the time, the ring just felt completely trivial, considering everything that just played out. You head back to Hammerhead, and Cid tells Noctis that King Regis wouldn't have made him leave if he hadn't planned for it. Something about this line really stuck with me and hooked me into the story. It just shows that there were forces at play that Noctis wasn't aware of, but that he, and I guess the player, would figure out together. At this point, I really forgot about the wedding, and the opening plot just really receded to the background. Noctis then finds out about the royal arms at the tombs of his ancestors, and this is really the point where Noctis stops being a prince and goes on the journey of being king. He needs to arm himself if he's going to take on the empire that just took everything from him. At Lestallum, Noctis gets a calling from the summoned Titan, or god as they're known in this world. The backstory of Titan is actually really cool and should have been highlighted a bit more. A god who's perpetually carrying a meteor on his back to prevent it from exploding is over the top, but it is interesting. To get to Titan, the party gets help from Ardyn, who I never expected to be the main villain of the story. At this point in the game, I thought there would be a major showdown with the Empire, but that wasn't to be the fate of Noctis. Luna was on her way, preparing Noctis for his ultimate purpose. It felt that the entire game, Noctis was just chasing and trying to catch up to the path that Luna had set up for him. He gets the Power of Titan after a battle that was, to be quite honest, was a bit clunky, but was still pretty epic in scale. Quickly afterwards, Noctis gets the Power of Ramuh after meeting Gentiana, learning that Luna has actually woken the gods so that they could give Noctis his power. He finally heads to Venice, and by Venice I mean Altissa, to finally meet Luna. This is one of the most beautifully designed cities in the game and in all of Final Fantasy, really. Altissa is a neutral city, and one of the greatest parts of the game are the negotiations between Noctis and the leader. The game reminds you that you are a king and you have to try to negotiate as one. Because being a king or a leader isn't just about inheriting a position or having something handed to you. Diplomacy is a key part of being a leader. After the negotiations, there's the scene with Leviathan. Now Leviathan had a lot of character. She was angry at being awoken, she attacks Luna, and I thought this was the point that Luna was going to die, but she was able to fight back. And though the battle was kind of confusing at first, I did manage to finally take the Leviathan down, and at this point, Noctis suffers through another tragedy. And seeing that it was Ardyn who did it wasn't something that I expected at all. This scene was strong, was emotional, was impactful, but it would have been more memorable if Luna and Noctis had spent time together. That's the thing. For most of the game, it's just Noctis with his friends, but there really needed to be scenes with Noctis and Luna. It just didn't work that they didn't have scenes together in the entire game. It was mostly just flashbacks to their childhood, or they were trading messages through Umbra. It's cool, but there needed to be a lot more. That said though, you still can't help but feel for Noctis. And at this point in the game, a villain truly emerges. The thing is with Ardyn, he doesn't come across as a bad person. He seems very jovial and kind and easygoing, but he's clearly the most evil character in the story. Noctis finally gets the ring at the center of this struggle, and I really didn't like the concept of a piece of jewelry that's supposed to be really powerful, because where have we seen that before? But actually the gameplay with the ring is actually really fun, and it would actually become a standard part of my arsenal for the remainder of the game, once Noctis does use it, of course. Waking up from his battle with Leviathan, finding out that Luna's been killed, Noctis also learns that his friend Ignis had lost his eyesight, which was a major surprise. Of course, fighting a massive force is going to lead to injuries, and I can't remember if a central character in the game had been affected the way that Ignis is in 15. This was another shocking twist. Ignis slows down considerably, and you have to move slower as a result. You can't just sprint all over the map. Again, this was a brilliant and unexpected touch, but I liked Ignis so much that I didn't mind waiting and taking the game a bit slowly. After Luna's death, it feels like Noctis is completely alone. He had been dealt so many blows by the Empire. Everything he had and took for granted and everything else he was working towards was taken away from him. For a minute, it even felt as if the party would split. But eventually, they work out their differences and come to terms with what has happened, and then refocus their energy on defeating the Empire. Noctis then heads to the capital to retrieve the stolen crystal and to save Prompto, only to find that the Empire itself is in ruins. In a bid for military might, the Empire had sold itself to a spiteful god in an attempt to consolidate power over the entire world. Their technological advancements and scientific experiments had turned on them, and they paid a heavy price equal to the one that they inflicted on Insomnia. At this point, it becomes a pure face-off between Ardyn and Noctis. You're no longer facing anyone but the spirit of vengeance itself. Noctis has to face the consequences of his forebears. Making his way to the crystal, he learns from Bahamut about his legacy and his destiny as the King of Light. His destiny to take on the evil that will bring eternal darkness to the entire world. Bahamut tells him that many have sacrificed themselves for Noctis, and now he has to do the same for them. The third and final tragedy of the game is losing Noctis. After 10 years, he returns much older and ready to fulfill the prophecy, prepared to give back to his friends who had served him loyally, prepared to give them a chance at having a future. After returning to the ruins of Insomnia, Noctis faces off against Ifrit, and then Ardyn. The fight against Ardyn is long, and being that Ardyn is Noctis' ancestor, it made sense that their fighting styles would be similar. When you beat Ardyn, he's transported to the Netherrealm, threatening to return and complete his mission in a different age. To rid the world of this evil, Noctis commits the ultimate sacrifice, and in the afterlife, he eliminates the spirit of vengeance. Final Fantasy 15 combines both fantasy and sci-fi, and even a touch of realism at the same time, and does so successfully. Despite its oddities, unevenness, and some glitches, all of these different genres coexist simultaneously in a very convincing blend. In FF15, Noctis represents magic, the side of the world that, despite being advanced and does use technology, is also steeped in a long tradition of kings whose job is to guard the crystal. The Empire, on the other hand, is fully committed to mindless progress and wants to use technology to spread and take over the world. They are prepared to achieve complete domination by combining magic with tech to assure their military conquest. Noctis as king has to fight off this invasion and the technology that has gone too far to serve military conquests. He's on the losing side and is really able to come on top by the aid of his very close friends. The Empire was so focused on domination that they didn't ask what force was guiding them. But then again, they can't ask that kind of question because unlike Insomnia, they don't have a connection to the land and its gods, but only want to control and dominate it. Noctis is one of the most relatable protagonists in the history of Final Fantasy. Noctis was meant to be a character players could identify with, to create a game rooted in reality. Noctis has lived a carefree life, always been looked after, isn't fully aware of the great events happening around him, and needs time to grow into the responsibility bestowed upon him from birth. At the start, you get the impression that he wants to just spend time with his friends. Maybe he isn't ready for marriage quite yet, and isn't ready to take on being a king. Even his friends don't really trust him. Ignis doesn't trust his driving, Gladio thinks he's not fit enough. It's hilarious, but it also suggests that maybe Noctis hasn't risen to the position he needs to be in. Everyone has been in Noctis' shoes at some point in time. As the players, we watch him grow and face and overcome the many challenges and losses as he becomes the king who saves the world. The party here is what really makes this game shine. Whether it's in a car or camping, they really do feel alive. Even if the dialogue does get repetitive at times, it still works at creating the feeling of 4 people traveling together. This alone is an incredible achievement. Most games you feel completely isolated from the rest of the world with your superpower. But FF15 solved that problem by creating 4 distinct voices that travel with you throughout the entire journey. I think more lines of dialogues would have elevated the game a bit more, and not just dialogue between the party members, but the other NPCs as well. Setting of the game and setup is one of my favorite aspects of the entire experience. The idea of a road trip with close friends is something that everyone has at least wanted at some point in time. I mean, these kind of road trips make for great memories and the best stories. The long stretches of desert road and the car rides and stops in Regalia really capture the feeling of adventure and discovery on the open road. That being said, I do wish there were more towns to discover with their own set of characters and side quests that amounted to more than just hunts. I do wish the game allowed the players to spend time in Insomnia before its fall. Could have added to the immersion and added to the world building, but what we did get was still pretty impressive as well. Ultimately, though the game does have its problems, the biggest issue and the biggest flaw preventing it from being truly a legendary experience was the undeveloped relationship between Noctis and Lunafreya. They really needed to have them spend time together. There needed to be some tension that they would have to overcome. They needed that bit of realism to go along with the fantasy. That said, you can't help but feel for Noctis. He wasn't perfect and he was very fallible, but he was also quite sympathetic at the same time, especially when you watch him rise up to the occasion and go on this journey and fulfill his destiny. Overall though, I enjoyed and was pleasantly surprised by my experience with FF15. I think the game was judged too harshly by critics and fans. This is an experience that is worth your time despite graphical and gameplay flaws. And though some of the decisions made with the characters were questionable, the game still manages to tell an epic tragedy with a memorable ensemble that's unlike anything that's come before.